Now, I know you guys have a lot of questions that you want to ask me, but hey, don't worry. I got you covered. Hey guys, this is ANIMAT, and welcome to Q&A with ANIMAT. And today what I have for you guys is 10 questions that have been asked by you, and not only are they great, but they also made me think a lot. And honestly, those are the questions that I really do like best. Like, as you will see, these are some questions that really did try to make me think for a long time. Like, these are legitimately tough questions, and it did require a lot for me to think up of a really good idea and to bring out a good answer for those questions. And you will see what I mean when I will show them. But also, beforehand, I just would like to say that with these tough questions, that is also a very helpful hint if you would like to have your question appear in Q&A with ANIMAT. Don't go around asking me those simple questions like, you know, request-like questions like, what are your thoughts on this movie, or what are your thoughts on that thing, or, you know, requests like, when are you gonna do animation look back this, or when are you gonna do a review of that? Like, if you could think of a thoughtful and creative question, then that's going to have a good chance to be in Q&A with ANIMAT. So, with all that said and done, let's go ahead and get things started with our first question that we got right over here, which is going to be from Eli Copperman. And Eli asks, what, in your opinion, makes any given piece of art pretentious rather than meaningful? And yeah, that's a great example of what I mean of a tough and thoughtful question. And I guess in my definition of pretentious art, it would be a piece of art that thinks that it has some sort of meaning, but in reality, it does not. Like the kind that would parade around thinking that it is doing something right, that it is something that believes it's intelligent, that it's doing something that is revolutionary, but in reality, they're honestly doing kind of like the opposite of how they think they actually are. So that's the thing about pretentious art, is that they're pretending to be something that's far bigger than what it actually is. And that is honestly why when I was a fine arts student back in college, me and many of my classmates, we had a massive distaste for contemporary art, because that is the full-on definition of pretentious art. It's art that pretends that it has some sort of deep meaning, but in reality, it's nothing more but an excuse in order to go and present a lack of talent from the actual artist. And I know that does sound harsh, but when you do look at a lot of contemporary art nowadays, a lot of it is trying to go and write down like some sort of deep meaning into it, then actually present some actual artistic talents. Like, no more are we in the days of like Andy Warhol or Monet or Van Gogh or Da Vinci or anything like that. Nowadays, like the artists that we have now, it just looks like they're just making paintings that were done by a 5-year-old, and honestly, it's just downright embarrassing. I don't know. Like, for me, I feel like skill is much more important to present in art than, like, trying to think up of some kind of meaning, because art is subjective, and your definition of what that piece of art would mean is not going to be the same than the other. So, yeah, I highly value talent and skill when it comes to art than the actual meaning, or like what would be the metaphor and stuff like that, because let's be honest, the truth is a lot of them is actually pretty bullcrap, and as someone who has studied art, I know firsthand. And on top of that, I'm sure a lot of you might be curious regarding about not just like full-on art itself, but what about movies? Is there a way for a feature film to actually seem pretentious? And yes, there are ways for movies to actually present themselves as something that is highly pretentious. And a great example of what I mean, at least a great example for an animated film. Wait a minute, hold on, I just thought of something. I don't know if I want to use this example because maybe there might be a few people that could be upset if I bring this up. Ah, what the fridge? Why not, you know? Alright, a great example of pretentious animated films, the Hotel Transylvania movies. Now, the reason why they are highly pretentious is because with each film that came out, all of them had a really terrible script. They're poorly written in terms of their story, the characters are one-dimensional, and honestly, not all the jokes actually pass off as funny. Each of them present this very weak script. And instead of doing something in order to go improve themselves, in order to actually go off as a good movie, you know, to actually have a good and engaging story, to have well-developed and creative characters, and to actually have some clever and witty jokes, instead what they do is just really crank up the cartooniness on its animation, thinking that it's going to solve everything. And you can see from every Hotel Transylvania movie, they become cartoonier and cartoonier, and that's where it really lends itself to become very pretentious, where it thinks that by acting as a cartoon and being ridiculously over the top, they think they can be passed off as a good movie, when in reality, it does not. And that's exactly why you really don't see a lot of critics praising these movies. You don't see even a lot of positive reviews from the Hotel Transylvania films. I mean, honestly, you look at it in a critical point of view, no wonder all of them would have like a rotten rating on Rotten Tomatoes, or at least borderline rotten or something like that. But also there is another great example for a pretentious movie in the live-action spectrum, and for that one, I want to bring up the 2014 film Escape from Tomorrow. Now, the thing is with Escape from Tomorrow is that this is a movie where it wants to present itself as something that is highly avant-garde. Like, that is a movie that wants to say that it wants to show the dark side of Disney, and it wants to use a lot of deep metaphors in order to present it that way. Like, to be black and white, to show disturbing imagery when they're in rides like It's a Small World. But in reality, the creator of the movie, Randy Moore, just simply has no idea what he's doing. He doesn't know how to develop a story. He doesn't know how to bring out his message in terms of, like, how to develop that message and bring it out as a movie. And he just doesn't know how to even craft a movie in the first place. Like, he doesn't know filmmaking 101, and it obviously shows. And this is why, in terms of Escape from Tomorrow, the only thing that it can do in order to sell itself is just the novelty of the fact that it filmed at Walt Disney World without Disney's permission, and that's pretty much it. And honestly, in terms of the message that it wants to say, well, the truth is, there isn't any message. The movie literally has nothing to say other than the fact that Spaceship Earth from Epcot looks like a giant testicle, and nothing else. Like, really, Escape from Tomorrow seems like the kind of film is meant for those people that really digs way too deep in the media that they consume. Like, the kind of people that think that there is actually a legitimate metaphor hidden within songs like the Beatles' I Am the Walrus or Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody. It's for those kind of people that think there is something way deep and there is some kind of hidden meaning in Escape from Tomorrow, but in reality, there isn't any. It pretends to think that it's like this deep avant-garde movie with some kind of hidden meaning to show the evil side of Disney, but in reality, it does not. And hopefully, I know that is quite a mouthful, but hopefully that does give you an example of my definition of what is pretentious art. Okay, so with that said, now let us go and move on to our next question that we have over here. That is going to be from Truth, Love, Hope. And Truth asks, "Hey Matt, just thought I'd try to ask a question. Forgive me if you said this already somewhere else, but it's not in a Q&A video. Anyways, while watching your videos since 2016, I have noticed that whether you've been excited for an animated movie or dreaded an animated movie, I don't believe I've ever seen you having the opposite reaction when finally seeing it. My question is, have you ever seen an animated movie you were excited for and then get severely disappointed by it, or vice versa, where you were dreading a movie's release and then get pleasantly surprised? If so, which movies?" And I will admit, Truth, you are actually correct on that one, and it is actually extremely rare, because with the trailers that I would see, and nowadays with trailers just summarizing up the movie all at once, whenever I would see those trailers, I would get a good example of how the movie might end up becoming, and for the most part, I would probably say like 95% of the time I would be correct in terms of my feelings on how this movie would come out and how I would overall feel about it. So yeah, it wouldn't necessarily be all that surprising that I would have some form of expectation from the movie and it would turn out to be true for myself. However, there have been those rare cases where what you have described actually did happen. And one example of one movie that I was excited for but really disappointed, probably the best example, it would have to be Hoodwinked 2. Now, I'm just gonna say right now that I actually really do enjoy the first Hoodwinked movie. Yeah, sure, the animation is a pile of crap, but the script is actually golden. It actually is a very well written movie. So I really was curious and kind of excited to go and check out Hoodwinked 2 to see more adventures with characters like Wolf, Red, and all those guys. So I was quite excited, but then the movie was released and I decided to check it out. And my God, I came out frustrated. I came out highly disappointed and angry, and I remember at the time, it was one of the worst movies that I've ever seen, and I still stand by it that Hoodwinked 2 was still a god-awful movie. Like, it was the first time now that the animation of Hoodwinked is now equally bad to the writing right now, or what I mean is actually vice versa, but yeah, that's an example of that. And as for the vice versa of it, of a movie that I dreaded and I actually came out really liking it, it took me a while to think about it, but I would probably have to say the Lego Movie. And the main reason would have to be, it's because of Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Now, you gotta keep in mind, this was back in the days before Lord and Miller were a household name and they were acclaimed directors. This was before the days of the Lego Movie and like the 21 Jump Street movies, where back then, like, yeah, they did that one dumb crazy movie with 21 Jump Street, but the only thing that they did was kind of notable was Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. And I'm sure you guys are pretty familiar with my feelings towards that movie, so I wasn't necessarily excited seeing a movie from the directors of two guys that clearly have no idea on how to create an animated feature film. So when I finally went and saw the Lego Movie, while I may not have jumped into the bandwagon thinking that the Lego Movie is one of the best animated films ever, I was still highly impressed by it. I still thought it was a great movie, and it did gain my respect for Lord and Miller as filmmakers. They actually did a really great job. So overall, I think I would say that would be my answer. So a movie I was excited for that turned out really bad was Hoodwinked 2. But a movie I was dreaded that turned out to be great was the Lego Movie, so hopefully that will answer your question. Alright, so now that I answered that one, let's go and move on to Hamo's reviews. And Hamo asked, hey Animat, how did you come up with the idea of the Animat seal of garbage and approval? Well, actually, that's kind of a coincidence because it actually relates to a movie that I just talked about, Hoodwinked 2. Because, like I said before, back then, Hoodwinked 2 was just so bad, and it really was one of the worst movies that I have seen at the time. So much so that I really wanted to do something about it. And back then, I really watched a lot of video game related YouTube content like Screw Attack or Angry Joe, and I remember they had their own seal of approvals or like seal of fails or seal of garbages or whatever like that. So I decided that in order to express my frustrations that I would go and first create the Animat seal of garbage and give it first to Hoodwinked 2. Now, I know there might be a few people that might bring this up, but it is true that once upon a time there actually was a prototype to the ANIMAT'S Seal of Garbage that did appear in one of my videos, and I believe it was one of the parts of Animation Look Back Dawn Bluth, where I talked about Thumbelina and how before the Emoji Movie, Thumbelina was the first and only animated feature to actually win the Razzie Award, and that was for the song Mary the Mole. So back then, that's when I decided, like, oh, it deserves the Seal of Fail or something like that. But then later on, I decided to ultimately call it the Seal of Garbage. But then a few months later, I decided, well, if I'm going to have a seal to give out to bad movies, then also I should go and create a seal for good movies. So that's when I decided to go and develop the ANIMAT'S Seal of Approval. And the first movie that I gave to that was actually The Adventures of Tintin. And I guess from there, I guess you could say the rest is history. So hopefully that can explain to you the origins of both ANIMAT seals. Okay, our next one that we have right over here is going to be from Ghost 100 Buster. And Ghost asked me, have you ever seen any musicals seen on Broadway or anywhere else? And I will say absolutely yes. As a theater kid myself, I have done a lot of theatrical plays, but at the same time, I have also seen a few shows myself, both on tour and also on Broadway in New York City. Now, I'm just going to say right now that one that I have seen both on Broadway and on tour is actually The Phantom of the Opera, considering that my family is a huge fan of Phantom, so of course I would have to see it more than once. And I would say right now, it is actually creative the way that both of them would do individually, like on Broadway and also on tour. There's a lot of creative points in there, like, of course, like with Phantom, they got the grandiose of the stage in New York, and then also on tour, what you got there is actually a really creative stage, which is honestly very fascinating how they all created all at once, like this big area that would constantly turn and then transform into different areas. It's actually really cool. But then there's one other one that I saw on tour, and that is Les Miserables, and that was actually a great show. Then the ones I have seen on Broadway, I've already mentioned Phantom, but also I have seen Spamalot, which was a really funny show, and also I remember when I first saw it, I actually sit way, way back, down to the point where right behind me is literally the control room where they control all the lights, all the sounds, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I was like way back, but I still got to see a really good show. Another one that I saw on Broadway is, of course, The Producers, since me and my family, we actually are huge fans of The Producers, and believe it or not, I actually do mean the 2005 musical. Yeah, we really like that movie. And I will agree, though, even though I do say that, yes, the Broadway show is definitely better than that film, the 2005 movie will always have a place in my heart. And finally, the one that I have seen, of course, is The Lion King. And I mean, as Disney fans and as me and my family, we are people who really do appreciate the art of theater. I mean, we gotta check out one, like, probably the most popular Disney Broadway show ever created, which is actually really amazing. And all the shows that I have mentioned are absolutely worth checking out. Now, our next question that we have here is actually going to be from Ninja Warrior Rabbids, and Ninja asked, if you were given the opportunity to do a collab with the Nostalgia Critic on a review, what would you review with him? Me personally, Hotel Transylvania, since Doug loves it and you don't really like it, it would show two different opinions and different sides. I can already see the jokes writing themselves. Well, first of all, to go and answer your question, to be very honest, if there was an opportunity that I would have to go and do a review with the Nostalgia Critic, I would mostly be open to do anything. But more specifically, as long as it is animation related, like maybe like a bad movie he has yet to fully review, like Home on the Range, or like I would probably even be down to do Thumbelina, or even like something like from the Muppets. Like I would be so down to do like a Muppets from Space review. But other than that, as long as it's either animation or Muppet related, I would be open to do anything. But it does bring up a very good subject regarding actually doing a collaboration with the Nostalgia Critic in the first place. Especially since nowadays, the Nostalgia Critic really has a pretty bad reputation ever since the hashtag change the channel controversy, where like Doug Walker, Rob, and also mainly his boss Mike Machad, like they handled it extremely poorly, and it not only slashed off a lot of their own reputation, but also kind of killed their website, where pretty much nearly everybody, with the exception of Brad Jones, basically abandoned ship, and everybody pretty much recognized that they really did pull off a bad move when it comes to responding to the controversy and stuff like that, when all they had to do is just apologize, and that's pretty much it. And yeah, that's kind of the big thing where it kind of makes me step back from actually doing a crossover with the Nostalgia Critic, or even wanting to do one. That, and also, for me personally, I'm not that big of a fan of the Nostalgia Critic anymore, since his works aren't really all that great. It's kind of like The Simpsons or Family Guy, where there was a time when the episodes were awesome and they were flat out hilarious, but nowadays it just feels like they're trying too much, and it really isn't like back in the good old days. So yeah, the Nostalgia Critic is pretty much the reviewing equivalent of Simpsons and Family Guy per se. And I know that in the past, it is true that I have been pretty critical in terms of some of the creative decisions that would go into some of the Nostalgia Critic episodes, and at the same time, I would view them more like they're making their episodes in more of a sellout kind of way, where they're doing it less for the creative input and more for the money, for the views, and all that kind of stuff. So the Nostalgia Critic does seem a bit sellout-y, and I was pretty critical in terms of that. However, nowadays, I know that I am highly aware that there is one fact that I can never change, and that Doug Walker is one of my biggest influence in becoming who I am right now, and that is something that I can never change. And even to this day, regardless of who Doug Walker is, I am still very appreciative of that in order to go and, like I said, create who I am right now. And honestly, if there's one thing that my haters had taught me, it's that holding a grudge, it does no good at all, and really, it really does destroy yourself more so than the person that you have a grudge against. And I don't want to be angry at Rob Walker or Doug Walker. Well, I mean, I'm not going to care about Mike Machad, because really, screw that guy. But I don't want to be angry against those guys anytime longer. And especially nowadays, I feel like the more the hashtag change the channel controversy continues, the more that I feel like there is no point in continuing it, and that if it does continue, then it's really going to do more damage to anyone than it would do any good. Like, not only it would damage those who would defend Channel Awesome, but it really does a lot of damage to people who are against Channel Awesome, and those who still want to try to add fuel to the fire. They're just making things worse for themselves, more so than just making things worse for Channel Awesome. So, you know, honestly, like, I wouldn't mind just bringing the hatchet and just move on in terms of Doug Walker and Rob Walker's parts. So, honestly, I do feel a little bit mixed. On one hand, like, maybe I would like to do it, and I remember in my past, it had always been, like, my dream to do a collaboration with the Nostalgia Critic, and at one point, I was one of those naive little reviewers that dreamt of being a part of thatguywiththeglasses.com, and, but then, on the other hand, there is that part where a lot of their reputation has been scarred, and I'm not sure if Doug Walker has ever done a crossover, or like a full-on legitimate crossover episode in the Nostalgia Critic since the Change the Channel controversy. But honestly, that is actually a good question for you guys that I want to ask you. Do you guys think do you guys think it's a good idea for me to do a collab with the Nostalgia Critic? Let me know what you think, and maybe we'll go from there. Maybe it's never gonna happen, and Doug and Rob Walker secretly hate my guts, and they don't want to talk to me or do a collaboration with me anyways, but I don't know, like, I thought it would be fun, but I have no hard feelings against neither Doug or Rob, so I'm just gonna lay it out on there. So yeah, that's hopefully that can answer the question, and hopefully I would like to know from you guys about your thoughts on this as well. Okay, so our next question that we have here is actually going to be from C Petway, and C would ask me, okay, since you have a profile on DeviantArt, I must ask you, what are your favorite artists you follow or like from the site? Okay, well, honestly, at this point, I have to bring up my DeviantArt page and check out the artists that I do follow. And I'm going to give you a few examples of people that I think really do deserve that you need to go and check out and are just great artists in general. First of all, I just want to give a shout out immediately to some of my friends like Sonic Guru, MD Cartoons, and Sailor Silverstar. Great artists, great friends, and I highly recommend you go and check those guys out and maybe even get a commission from them, if they do offer it, of course. But other artists that I really do like, well, first of all, of course, I really like Cosperry. Cosperry is definitely an amazing artist, and probably an artist that you are familiar with as well, because Cosperry is actually the artist who is very well known for actually implementing the Don Bluth style onto Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, Cosperry also does a lot of different artworks, and sometimes she will draw characters from The Land Before Time or The Lion King, or she would make furry versions of characters from like Seinfeld or stuff like that, or she would go and produce her own characters like the Seven Stevens, or she would even go and create like Mario characters and make them look like something out of a 90s animated feature. But yeah, like her main thing that she is well known for is actually the Five Nights at Freddy's art that she has done. Other great examples of artists, I'm just trying to find some. Phil Crash Murphy, he's actually a really amazing artist where he actually does work as a cover artist for IDW Comics. So this is one guy who is actually a really talented artist that you need to go and check out some of his stuff. Another great example of a great artist that I follow, I'm just double checking here. But I would also say Lovely Dagger. Now, I'm just going to give you a warning that Lovely Dagger is an artist that would lean a little bit more towards the adult side, but I just want to say that I cannot resist her art because her characters look absolutely adorable. Like, the girls that she draws, yeah, like, they really are busty, but oh my god, these girls are like so cute. Even if they are furries, they do look a little bit more human, but oh my god, it's like the kind of girls that that would make me blush. And honestly, it's just the kind of artwork that I just couldn't resist because they really do look adorable. Then there is also Princess of Disney 27, and her artwork is actually really great, but also, it's mainly because they do cater a lot more to some of my taste, because she would specialize a lot more in drawing artwork based on some Disney stuff, but specifically based on some Disney attractions, where she would have stuff based on Disney rides like Journey into Imagination or the Haunted Mansion and stuff like that. She's definitely one worth checking out. Also, another one that I do like is actually Slasher 12. And Slasher 12 has a very interesting art style where it's a bit of a mix of the classic Mickey Mouse cartoons and also some of the Belgian comics like Spirou and stuff like that. So that's another artist that I recommend. But yeah, those are just a few examples of some of the people that I do follow on DeviantArt. But yeah, they are definitely great artists, and I highly recommend that you guys go ahead and check them out and actually go follow and like them, you know? They really are worth the support. Now, another question that I got right here is going to be coming from Chase Gould, and Chase asks me, "Hey Animat, do you think DreamWorks Animation will ever get popular again in terms of their animated films?" Now, that would depend on your definition of what you mean by popular, because technically in the basic definition of popular, I guess you could say that DreamWorks Animation will always be popular as long as they keep on producing successful animated features, because if their movies are a hit, then that is a clear sign that they are still popular. But I guess in this case right over here, I guess you mean popular in terms of their reputation. In terms of if DreamWorks Animation would get their popularity back as the main rivals of Disney in terms of animation. And I'm just gonna say right now, in the foreseeable, sorry guys, here, let me just turn off my Porky Pig mode. In terms of them getting popular again on that level, in the foreseeable future, I don't think so, because like, when you see right now with the movies that DreamWorks Animation is currently making, I feel like ever since Home, they are starting to produce animated features that are catering more towards kids, and exclusively to kids. Now, of course, there can be a few exceptions like Kung Fu Panda 3, but that is an exception mainly because it is a sequel to some of their more successful franchises. But honestly, with some of the new stuff that they would bring in, like the new IPs like Trolls and Boss Baby and Home, they really do feel like they are aiming just for kids and go more into the silly route instead of really going back to the old days when they used to do stuff like Madagascar and Shrek and Kung Fu Panda and all those films. Now, granted, like, it can happen when those movies could work. Like, the best example I could think of a great recent DreamWorks animation film would be Captain Underpants, considering that not only is it good as an adaptation to the book, staying true to its comedic tone, but also greatly created as a movie in itself. But also, I just want to say that with the other movies that they got, it just doesn't necessarily work out, and it really does notch down DreamWorks' reputation, where now they are inching closer to some of the lower tier animation studios like Blue Sky and Sony Animation. And honestly, in the foreseeable future, considering that a lot of them are just sequels to those movies that are pandering just for kids, like Croods 2 and Trolls 2 and The Boss Baby 2, I don't think I can see that changing really anytime soon. Honestly, the only glimmer of hope that I would have for DreamWorks Animation would be some of their new IPs. Now, as I'm recording this Q&A, the only ones that are coming up that are actually original IPs would include Abominable, and I think there's that Blumhouse crossover with Spooky Jack. And crossover, I mean like the collaboration between DreamWorks Animation and Blumhouse Pictures. Now, maybe if there is hope for those movies that they could turn out to be original, that they could turn out to be something as good as like How to Train Your Dragon or Kung Fu Panda, then maybe DreamWorks can get back on the saddle and, you know, they can bring their reputation back up. But honestly, with the movies that they have coming up in their lineup as of this Q&A, I honestly don't see that changing anytime soon. Alright, our next story that we got right over here is gonna be from EMC Video Productions, and EMC asked me, is there a video you were planning on making but eventually scrapped? In other words, are there any unrealized Electric Dragon 505 videos? Now, when you are a creative person, first of all, I just gotta say, when you are a creative person, you're gonna have so many ideas that are never gonna come into fruition, that you're gonna think, oh, maybe this idea would work, oh, but nah, probably not. Oh, maybe I'll try this kind of video, nah, screw it. Or maybe I'll do research on this, probably not. So there are tons of ideas that even for me that I've got that would come and go. But I would say the closest thing that came into fruition, but ultimately I decided to cancel it, and would really change the way that I would make my videos. There used to be a time when I would actually have a series called ANIMAT'S live action reviews, or I think I made that even before I called myself ANIMAT. I think it was just Matt's live action reviews, or Matt's LA reviews. And over there, I originally thought that on top of making reviews of animated films, I'll also go and review live action films. And honestly, I've only done 2 in the past. I've only done 2 for that series in particular. First of all, I did Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland, and I also did the Martin Scorsese's film, Shutter Island, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, which I really like that movie, by the way. And I eventually decided, you know what, it seems a little bit too clustered, and I feel like I would just bombard my whole videos with nothing but reviews, both animated and live action, and I decided maybe that's not necessarily the route that I want to go with my videos. And from there, I decided to just stick with animation. And keep in mind, this was way back in the beginnings of my YouTube career. So that really did change to become who I am. Now, technically, you could say that it is still alive and well, because technically, yes, I still do review live action movies, rather it be the ones I get requested on Patreon, or the ones that I would do on my own free will, like many of the Disney live action movies, or at least the ones that are based on like one of the classic animated films, you know, like the live action remakes, or something that's based on a ride like Pirates of the Caribbean, or even Saving Mr. Banks. So I decided to go and do that. So yeah, technically that is still alive and well, but it used to be like its own major thing. Now, I don't know if I do have those reviews in my folder. Maybe they're gone forever. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, there was a once upon a time that I originally wanted to have a whole series dedicated to reviewing live action movies, but yeah, that idea kind of got scrapped. Okay, our next question that we got here is going to be from GooGamp32, and GooGamp asks, do you think that Disney Animation can adapt a Star Wars extended universe story into an animated feature, like how they adapted Big Hero 6 from an obscure Marvel comic book, and if so, which one would you like them to use? Now, honestly, the fact that you did bring up Big Hero 6, that actually is a good example as to how it could be highly possible that Disney can make a legitimate animated feature based on the Star Wars universe. And I don't mean the ones based on like their TV shows, like make a Star Wars Rebel movie or anything like that. I mean like something legitimately out of Walt Disney Animation Studios or Pixar Animation Studios to make a movie that would be canon in the Star Wars universe. It could highly be possible. I mean, we did technically got a little bit of that in Ralph Breaks the Internet, so I don't see how it's impossible that Disney would actually make an animated Star Wars movie with their top animators and stuff like that. I think it could highly be possible if they would continue to do so, because the thing is right now, like Disney and Lucasfilm, currently they're not all that interested in creating more Star Wars movies ever since the massive flop of Solo, a Star Wars story. In fact, I think they even canceled many of their spin-off films as well, like Boba Fett. And from there, they would rather try to focus on like other aspects, you know, like focus more on television, like the Disney Plus series that they're gonna have. From there, it does seem pretty possible that making another Star Wars spin-off film could be unlikely, and making more Star Wars movies is going to be something we will see less and less from Disney. But if there ever is the case that Disney would be interested in making more Star Wars movies, then honestly, I don't see why not that they would bring in their animation people to make one for them. And as for which one I would like to see, to be very honest, I thought about it and I'm not sure specifically what I would want, but I would like to see something that would really take advantage of the fact that it is an animated film. So maybe something that would focus a lot more on the droids, like maybe like a spin-off film of C-3PO and R2-D2, or maybe even something that would focus on the creatures and stuff like that. I mean, it's not the first time that Star Wars entered into the animation world, so why not go ahead and go into that route as well? So that's just my idea, if ever the case would be that Disney would legitimately make a Star Wars animated feature. And finally, we have one more question to go, and this one shall be coming from Gavion the Goggle Chew. And Gavion asked me, "Hey Animat, are you hyped for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate? If so, what's your favorite newcomer so far, and why is it not Isabelle?" Okay, I'm just gonna start things off by answering the last question, and the reason why I'm not all that hyped for Isabelle is mainly because I don't play the Animal Crossing games. I don't have anything against them, and I'm sure they are wonderful games. It's just me, myself, I'm not a huge fan of Animal Crossing. I just don't really play them, so that's why the reveal that Isabelle is going to be a playable fighter just doesn't necessarily do much as the others. But I will say this: yes, I am extremely hyped for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I don't think I could be any more hyped for a Switch game than any other games that we have gotten so far. Maybe even more than Kirby Star Allies. But I will say that in terms of my favorite newcomer that's going to be coming up, hands down, Piranha Plant! Nah, I'm just kidding. But the two that I really am interested to see, first off would be King K. Rool, because I actually do play a lot as King Dedede. Even though my main is Kirby, I do have a lot of fun playing as King Dedede, and he does look like he's going to be a lot of fun in this game as well. But with King K. Rool, even though he is not an Echo Fighter of King Dedede, he does look like he will have a similar fighting style, and it does look pretty interesting, so I would be down to play a bit with King K. Rool. But also another one that I am really hyped for, and as a Pokemon fan, I gotta say, I'm pretty excited to play with Incineroar, because I've always thought having a new fighting type Pokemon might actually be a great idea. Like, for a while, I thought a great addition to the Smash Bros. Games would be a Pokemon like Blaziken. I mean, wouldn't it make sense for a fighting game that you would have a Pokemon, you would have a fighting type Pokemon appear in there? And with Incineroar, while it is true, yes, technically he's not a fighting type Pokemon, like, Incineroar is a fighting type in the same way that Charizard is a dragon type. I am still pretty excited to see the moves that Incineroar would have. And as a Pokemon player myself, I am actually pretty excited to play with more different types of Pokemon. And on top of that, I also do play with Pokemons as well in Smash Bros. Like, I love playing with Pikachu. Like, he's one of my secondary characters that I love playing with. I like Jigglypuff. I also like Lucario. Not much on some of the other ones, though, admittedly. Like, not much on Greninja or Charizard or even Mewtwo. But hopefully Incineroar would actually be a lot of fun to play. And with all that said, that is pretty much it with this episode of Q&A with Animat. So I just want to start things off by giving out a huge thanks to everybody who has asked me a question for this episode. And if you would like to ask a thoughtful and creative question for me to go and appear in Q&A with Animat, then just write one down. Really use your head to think up of a really good question for me to answer, and maybe you'll actually get your chance. Who knows? But I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, see you later, dudes!